Darlene, thank you for giving me the honor of honoring your brother. You know, yesterday the world said goodbye to Lindsey Graham in a beautiful 4-hour church service. The silver lining was that is the longest period of time Lindsey Graham had ever been in church. I want to thank you for being here to honor the life and legacy of, I just never could call him Chairman Graham. He never wanted to be called Chairman Graham. He wanted to be Lindsey. So I want to thank you for being, we have so many dignitaries, so many people famous people from television. We have so many elected officials. We have judges. And I can tell you right now, he would be looking down on us, wondering why there weren't more people here and why Governor McMaster had not already named the city of Columbia after him. Both Governor McMaster and Senator Scott put their finger on it. The reason Lindsey resonated with us is because he was us. This undersized kid who was not born with a silver spoon in his mouth, but he was born with a plastic fork in his mouth in central South Carolina. But with wit and determination and hard work, your fellow citizens will trust you to represent them. That is the story of America. It is the story of South Carolina, that we punch above our weight. This kid from central South Carolina, Darlene, whose parents y'all buried far too early, rose to be mourned by world leaders, friends with presidents, chosen by his people. This lawyer from a small upstate law firm would be responsible for picking Supreme Court justices. Lindsey Graham is a metaphor for us, for the country, for our state. You know, our friendship began the way all really beautiful, powerful friendships began. He endorsed my opponent when I ran for Congress the first time. I'm not kidding. I wish I was. You know, a lot of politicians, they joke. They say, I'll do whatever helps you more. I'll endorse you or I'll endorse your opponent. Lindsey wasn't joking. He endorsed my opponent. After we narrowly eked out a victory and my wife is picking the confetti out of my pomade on election night, the very first phone call I got was from Lindsey Graham. He said, I will be the best friend that you have in Washington, D.C. And I'll be doggone then Congressman Scott if he was not. He helped us with committee assignments. He helped us navigate the waters of Washington. He never looked at us and saw a competitor. He looked at us and saw a fellow South Carolinian that needed some help. The things that that man did for me that no one else could have done. He introduced me to a guy named Bono. He pronounced it Bono. He couldn't tell you a single song U2 had ever recorded or written, but he knew that I was a fan of U2, and I wanted to meet Bono. 5 different times I got to be in the room with a guy named Paul Hewson, also known as Bono, because Lindsey Graham thought enough to think about a lowly House member and invite him over to the Senate. And you know what they were talking about? It certainly wasn't about music. And it wasn't about the earrings that Bono had. They were talking about children in Africa who needed drugs, they needed medicine, and they needed food. Sometimes in this world that we find ourselves in, 99 is a failing grade. Not with Lindsey Graham. If he could find one thing that he agreed with you on, that's what he put his energies in. And with Bono, it was children in Africa. And I got to tell you this, and my colleagues will back me up, how many different times did that man say, look, this is a tough vote. I'm going to vote yes. but y'all ought to vote no. It's better for your political career. I'm taking some risk, and I'm going to get some flack. But you need to do what is best for you, and I am going to do what is best for my beloved state of South Carolina. And he cast some really tough votes. I never met a less pretentious person in my life than Lindsey Graham. It wasn't the trappings of office that he cared about. It was the work. And there is some bitter symmetry to the fact that it was work that he lived for, Darlene, but I am convinced that it is work that took him from us. On those long trains and this plane ride to Ukraine, not because, as the media tells us, he loved war, but because blessed are the peacemakers. People had it wrong about Lindsey Graham. Was he willing to go to war? Yes, as a last resort. Blessed are the peacemakers. He was on a trip, what turned out to be his last trip, trying to broker peace in a war where hundreds of thousands of people had lost their lives. For those D.C. reporters who believe that Lindsey lacked convictions, I can assure you he did not, because I witnessed several of them. Andrew King is here. Andrew, Richard Perry, Van Cato. I can't even call you staff. You were not staff to him. You were family to him. You were the sons that he did not have. And we endured a lot together. So far in life, the four of us have never shared a prison cell. There's still time, but we haven't done it. Not prisoners of war. But we shared a golf cart with him, and we played golf with him, and I'm not sure there's that much difference between the three. The convictions that Lindsey Graham had that come to mind immediately is he had an almost religious aversion to using what we call a rangefinder. If you are familiar with golf, it tells you what the yardage is, so you don't have to ask somebody else 15 times, how many yards do I have? He had a deeply held conviction against using hearing aids. And Sean and Ansley, he had a really deeply held conviction against the memory supplements that we sell on Fox News during commercial breaks. Because I'm just going to give you a glimpse of what playing golf with Lindsey Graham was like. So he would tee off having hit no warm-up shots whatsoever, and it would go so far left that I think geometrically it may have actually been right. I think you could walk either direction and you would find the ball at the same time. And he would say, you know, hey, Trey, go get that golf ball for me. And I would say, Chairman, I love you to death, but there's a reason my wife and I left the church we were at in Spartanburg. I don't like snakes. I am not going to look for your golf ball. And he said, well, I'll just drop one out in the fairway with you. He said, how far do I have? 168 yards. First two times you ever said anything to Lindsey Graham were just for fun. He didn't hear him. 168 yards. How far I got? 168 yards, Chairman. 68? How did you get to be the chairman of budget? 168 yards. What do you think I ought to hit? Whatever goes 168 yards, Lindsey, I don't have any idea. I'm going to hit a pitching wedge. Well, if we were hitting off of the top of Mount Everest, yes, you should hit a pitching wedge. Lindsey, you don't hit a 168-yard pitching wedge. Times that by 18 times how many rounds of golf I was privileged to play with that man. You know, senators and federal judges have slightly different rules when it comes to golf. The first one that comes to mind is they don't pay their debts. You can tell that I don't practice law anymore because there's some judges here and they probably don't find that as funny as I do. But Lindsey was turning over a new leaf. I played about a month ago with a guy named John Ratcliffe, who's our CIA director, and Johnny and I somehow managed to eke out like a 6-up victory over Lindsey and his partner, and Lindsey decided to pay. So he brings out this crumpled up, probably counterfeit $20 bill out of his pocket, and he hands it to John Ratcliffe. Ratcliffe's on a government salary. He took it. I handed it back to him. I said, look, Fox is great to me. Plus, Lindsey, honestly, that would buy you 2 brand new suits. You need to keep that $20 bill. He told me he was going to run for president. Scott, my reaction was not unlike yours. But I said, let me hear you out. And he said, well, you tell me, what do I need to do to be more competitive in a presidential race? And I said, you need to get married, Senator Graham. And he said, well, there's some things I'm just not willing to do, Trey, even if it means not being the president of the United States. And I don't know if y'all knew this or not. I mean, the media never talks about it. Lindsey actually wasn't married. Did y'all know that? The media never brings that up, but they never get right why he was never married. I know why he was never married. I sat through a wedding ceremony with him. I know why he was not married. I sat through their wedding ceremony with Lindsey Graham. He shows up at the church, Seacoast in Charleston. He asked my wife and I to wait on him because he was running just a tad bit late. He showed up in cargo pants and a shirt, like a T-shirt. And my wife, who's the sweetest human being on the face of the earth, said, you know, Chairman Graham, would you like us to wait while you change? And he said, change what? I mean, you can barely see the stains. No, I can't see the stains, Lindsey, but I can see the Dale Earnhardt logo on your shirt. Well, he wasn't going to go change, so we finally work our way in there to the beautiful wedding of Tim and Mindy Scott, and it was gorgeous. It was a beautiful wedding. But you cannot see 2 deaf people beside each other at a wedding. So my wife figured that out, and she sat in between us, which was a tragic mistake in hindsight. So for those who are wondering why Lindsey Graham was never married, there's not a chance in the world that he would have made it through the wedding vows, because he didn't make it through Tim and Mindy's. When the pastor got to for better or worse, Lindsey whispered to me like an F5 tornado, like, how sick are we talking about? You mean like seasonal allergies? You mean a cold? And my wife's trying to get us both to calm down, and then they get to for richer, for poorer, and you can imagine what his reaction to that was. Tim, don't do it. Negotiate. Let me go start another gang up in Washington and get you a better deal. So you have no idea how hard it is to get kicked out of a wedding, but we managed to do it. He loved, I cannot use the word staff. I cannot. Y'all have been so amazing the last 2 weeks. Darlene, you have one of the best group of people that's ever been assembled in South Carolina and Washington. I cannot call them staff. They were family to him. And old Richard Perry, God bless him, he's been with Lindsey since the earth cooled. And how many difficult conversations has Richard had? You know, the first time Lindsey ran for Senate, he sat Richard down and said, Richard, 31% of the people in this state are not going to vote for me no matter what. You don't need to worry about it. Don't even try. Richard's sitting there scratching his head thinking, well, I mean, we can try, can't we? I mean, do you have to give up on 31%? Don't worry about it. 6 years later, Lindsey's running for re-election. He says, Richard, 42% of the people in this state are not going to vote for me no matter what. Well, Richard's a smart guy. He sees things are not going in the right direction. And then this last go around, Lindsey said, Richard, 49% of the people in this state are not going to vote for me no matter what. That man had incredible self-awareness. He knew who he was. Tim and I looked at polls, and we see that we're like double-digit disapproval, and we're on the phone with our therapist. Lindsey sees 55-45, and he thinks he's got 5 points to play with. Was he high profile? Yes. He just never acted like it. He treated the boys that parked the golf carts exactly the same as he did the men who owned the golf course. I walked through a lot of airports with Lindsey Graham. He never failed to stop to thank someone in uniform. And for a man that did not have biological children, he sure followed the teachings of another famous man who did not have biological children by the name of Jesus. I'm on a driving range with Van Cato, and I hear Lindsey talking in a voice that I have never heard him talk in before. It was sympathetic, empathetic, and I think, what has happened to my friend? And Van politely tells me he is talking to a child who's getting ready to have surgery. And he was speaking like he was the parent of 12 children. Lindsey Graham was the least pretentious person I have ever seen in politics. Speaking of that prayer breakfast, I was going to let it go, but I can't. You know, I should listen to my wife. She said, let that one go, Trey. I can't do it. Honey, I'm sorry. Yes, Tim Scott had a prayer breakfast. And there for a while, I mean, back when I was there wasn't any talk about your personal sex life at the prayer breakfast. That came later after I left. So Lindsey was sometimes, that's not true. Lindsey was always late. He wasn't sometimes late, he was always late. And Tim had just finished a beautiful sermon, and I was so lucky I had two senators that quoted the Bible. One of them got it right, and one of them wasn't even close. So Tim asked us to share our favorite Bible verse, and Lindsey stood up there and shared his, and I whispered to Tim, that's actually a line from the movie Gladiator. That's not a Bible verse, but... And then that small county lawyer wowed the jury like I've never seen a preacher do, with the authenticity, the sincerity of his message, the humility of his message. He did more for the cause of Christ without being able to cite a Bible verse, just with the authentic way that he presented his relationship with Christ. You know, there are a few things in life less relevant than a former member of Congress. And you do wonder, is anybody going to return these telephone calls? Anybody ever going to call you? When you leave, you go through a period where you just question your relevance. My two senators would not allow that to happen. That man will preach my funeral. And Lindsey Graham spent more time with me after I left the House than when I was his colleague in the House. He took me on trips with him. He took me to see the President of the United States with him. I played more golf with him when I was a non-member of anything than I ever did when I was actually in a position where I could help him. To my friends in the media, or to those on social media, and boy, if I could go back in time and change one thing, I would never have got Lindsey an iPhone. I would have kept that flip phone, and whoever taught him how to use X, there's a special place in purgatory for you. I got to tell to all of Lindsey Graham's critics, he never hated you back. If your goal was for him to treat you the way that some people treated him, you failed. he was the worst at carrying a grudge. I had to keep a list of who we were mad at because he could not remember who had done what. And what speaks to the love and the forgiveness of Christ more than not carrying a grudge? I saw him cry one time. I saw him get teary-eyed one time, and I saw him cry one time. Darlene, he cried at his retirement ceremony from the Air Force because he loved wearing the uniform of his country. He felt like he was part of something. He had a camaraderie, a esprit de corps. He had brothers. And Darlene, I saw him get misty-eyed almost every time your name came up, and you don't doubt that he loved you, but I will tell you, even before I really got to know you, I knew one thing about Lindsey Graham, that he loved his baby sister. We were on the 16th tee box at the Country Club of Spartanburg, and I saw Lindsey running back. Well, that's not true. I saw Lindsey jogging back. Let me get this right. He was briskly walking back to the 15th green because he had forgotten something. And I thought it was the quarter that he marked his ball with because that could get him to move pretty quick, but that's not what it was. He had forgotten the putter that your father gave him. And he came back to the 16th tee box, and I'm standing there, Larry, with my son, and he says, and he was misty-eyed, there are three things that matter to me in my life. This putter, because my father gave it to me. The class ring that my mama bought for me. And my baby sister, Darlene. And that was it. Larry, he liked you as much as any brother can like someone who marries their baby sister. That's the nicest way I can put it for you. If only I had known that July 3rd, when our son and you and Lindsey and I played that round of golf, that it would be the last time I would ever see. If only I'd known. But we don't know, and that's kind of the point, isn't it? That's what Lindsey would tell us. Folks, I was talking to Sean Hannity, and Sean said, what do you think Lindsey would say if he was speaking at our service? And I said, well, Sean, they'd have to beam him in from Saudi Arabia. He wouldn't be at our service. Are you kidding me? But if he were to be beamed in, he would say, those flowers are beautiful. I would love to have seen them when I still could. Send the flowers when people can see them. And he would be so overwhelmed with the outpouring of love that has been visited upon him and his legacy and his family over the last 2 weeks. He'd be overwhelmed. But my heart breaks because he didn't get to hear more of it when he actually could have heard it. So what Lindsey would say is send flowers to people when they can still smell them. And tell people you love them when they can still hear you. Last thing he said to me, Larry, you were in the parking lot, I was in the parking lot. He just was with one of my children, but he said, tell the other child, Abigail, hello, tell Terry hello. He loved my wife. He loved my wife. And I will call you when I get home. That's the last word that crossed his lips to me was home. Lindsey, you are home. Literally, figuratively, you are back in your beloved South Carolina, and you will soon be laid to rest in your hometown. You know, in conclusion, Lindsey was fascinated with life after Congress, probably because he knew he would never experience it. He would be walking the halls of the Senate until he was taken home by the Lord. So he was fascinated, Sean, that people would pay us to read a teleprompter. He was fascinated that people would actually pay to hear the same boring speech that we gave for free when we were members of Congress. So we spent a lot of time talking about what life after Congress was like, because he never would have gotten to experience it. And he knew this. I gave 95 speeches. I've given 95 speeches since I left. Different states, different groups, different topics. One common denominator. Started every one of them with a joke about Lindsey Graham. You only pick on people that you love, so I wanted there to be no doubt that I love that man. So I won't tell the joke, but I will never tell it again. I will give you a glimpse, and then we will draw this to an end. I tell this joke about 3 of my friends going to heaven and violating the rules of heaven. John Boehner was one of them. He broke into a CVS and stole some cigarettes and some self-tanning lotion, and he was chained to Roseanne Barr. And then I said Marco Rubio violated the rules of heaven. He broke into Mary Magdalene's apartment to steal some high-heel boots in case he ever ran for president again. And he was chained to Richard Simmons with a 3-foot-long chain. And then the punchline is, and then I see my friend Lindsey Graham, and he's chained to Cindy Crawford. And in a voice as loud as thunder, I hear, Cindy Crawford, you have violated the rules of heaven, and this is your punishment for all of eternity. And I never once had that joke not work. And I will never again tell it. Because he's not chained to anybody. He is in the arms of his Lord and Savior. He is surrounded by the love of his parents, darling. And he is home. He is home. Lindsey, I loved you. You made me laugh. You made me think. Maybe you want to jump out of airplanes. You got me fined by the FCC when you came on my show. And you have made me cry a lot over the last 2 weeks. But I want you to know, brother, that your name will echo through the halls of history. In your state, in your country, they loved you. In your family and your friends, they loved you. And I wish you could have been here to listen to how much people loved and respected you. I will do what you would have wanted me to do, which is take care of your sister. That is all you would have asked me to do. Take care of your sister. And that is what I will do. And then one day I will see you again, and we can laugh and we can fight. And we'll do it forever and all of eternity. And until that day, I will miss you with my whole heart. God bless you, brother.